Hey there, Internet friends. Trevor Starkey here with another episode of What I Feel Like Friday. This week, I'm going to talk about something that probably doesn't matter to like 99% of you guys, especially because what I saw you won't necessarily be able to see. But I'm going to talk about Fun Home, which is a musical that I saw at my local kind of Broadway touring house here a couple days ago. Came through Gamage Auditorium, which is over at ASU. And it was a Tony winner, Best Musical, I believe in 2015, I think 2 years ago. 2014, 2015, something like that. And it tells the story of Alison Bechdel. It is based on kind of the graphic novel memoir that she wrote about how she grew up in a funeral home, hence the Fun Home of the title, and the family called it the Fun Home. And it's about her trying to kind of reflect on the past and find a connection with her father, who was a closeted homosexual and didn't really, she came out when she was in college and he died a few months later. And so they never really got to share kind of that aspect of their lives together. The fact that they had this big thing in common between the two of them. So you get to see this series of vignettes of small Allison, medium Allison, and narrator present day Allison kind of looking back and seeing all of these little moments of growing up and the relationship between her and her father, and how strained it was potentially by the fact that he was maybe having to hide this big part of himself from everybody. Now, I've listened to the musical a lot on the soundtrack. I have it just on my phone, and I'll throw it in every now and then. And I was surprised still at how much the show resonated with me and how impactful it was. I was sitting in the mezzanine. That's where my seats are for this season, this year. So I was, 100 feet from the stage, but I was still feeling very emotionally connected to Allison in this case, which was I wasn't expecting to find myself necessarily identifying with lesbian cartoonist, but the fact that so much of this story tells kind of the strain of the relationship between her and her father, and how they're so very much like two ships passing in the night in terms of how they connect with each other. They're very surface level in kind of the relationship that they have, and it resonated with me because it had me thinking of how my own relationship with my own parents, my father in particular, I was thinking throughout the musical a lot, how my father, though he is still here, I will never have a great relationship with him, just because it's not how he and I are built. It's not the relationship that we have. We're never going to really talk deeper and do a deep dive into our feelings or anything like that. We're going to talk, hey, what shows are you watching this year? You want to go see a movie? Maybe let's do that. Let's talk about Star Trek or something like that. He and I just don't have that kind of emotional resonance that I wanted to see these characters have. And so kind of seeing their struggle and their failure to communicate with one another really struck me with my own inability to communicate with my father. And knowing that, even knowing this and talking about it now, I know that when I go see him at our family lunch tomorrow, I'm not going to suddenly open up and talk to him and expect to have this deep, profound conversation or this relationship with him, just because that's not who he is and that's not who I am. As much as, in the thrill of seeing it in a grand story musical kind of thing, I might want that to be. I just know that that's not who we are. That's not who we're going to be. And so there was legitimate tears kind of running down my face at mourning the relationship that we'll never have, I guess. You also have Bruce, who is the father here, is very much like the master of passive aggressive kind of cattiness, specifically when he's talking to small Allison, who's the young elementary school era version of Allison that we see in the flashbacks here. She'll come to him with a project where she's drawing a map for a project in school or something, and she's doing it in a more cartoony style, and he says, well, let's make it better. Here's how you can make it better. Here, let me teach you form. You could be really talented, but you need to learn the rules of it, and I am the one that can bestow those rules upon you. And even when she says, I like it my way better, he basically walks away, and he's like, fine, you want to take it in, and you want to be laughed at? I don't care. Do whatever you want. I don't care. It's not my problem. And like, I see that scene, and I immediately think back on all the times that my own parents would come to me and say, well, I mean, you'd certainly make more as an engineer, or like questioning my love of the arts and my passion to get involved in the arts, or now my passion to get involved in video games and writing and talking about video games for a living. They like, it's just not something that they can fathom. They can't see that as a possibility, that as an option. And so they, in doing what they think is looking out, for me and trying to steer me down a certain path, they don't realize just how, like, much of a mind-fuckery piece of that kind of comment is. And so it's, like, again, it was seeing myself in this character and seeing, the judgment that her family was putting on her, and seeing myself in that, and seeing and thinking of the judgment that my own family has put on me. All in all, like, I'm talking a lot about, like, the dramatic aspects of the show, but their comedy in the show works really well as well. You have, again, there's kind of a funny juxtaposition to all of this taking place in a family that is also running a funeral home that they lovingly call the Fun Home, hence the title of the show. And there's one specific highlight with the three children in the show. You have small Allison as well as her two brothers. They basically create their own fake commercial for the Fun Home, set to a very, like, Jackson 5-esque type of song. And so they're doing, like, a lovely little dance routine, talking about, like, all the selling points of the Fun Home as they're, like, dancing around a casket. So there's a lot of humor in the show as well. You also have medium Allison, who is basically like the college-age Allison, who is kind of coming into her own, realizing her own sexuality, and kind of coming out of the closet. You have her falling for kind of an activist dyke that she runs into, and I'm not trying to, like, say that in a derogatory term. They kind of talk about themselves as dykes, given the era that it was. But the Joan kind of, like, medium Allison and Joan kind of really hit it off and have a nice little connection, and we get to see how goofy and awkward and, like, socially uncomfortable Allison is with her own sexuality, and kind of coming to terms with that, and she sings this lovely soliloquy to the audience about how she's going to change her major to Joan. She's going to change her major to sex with Joan, with a minor in kissing Joan. And it's like it's a delightful song. So yeah, there's a lot of humor to be mined from the show as well. And I think the entire cast really kind of nails it. It's always wary going and seeing a show with, like, children in it, and this does have, like, a good chunk of its cast are children. Especially a show, like, touching on such adult themes, and having one of the children kind of sing this, like, love song to a woman that she has just seen for the first time. She walks in. Hearing that from, like, a 10-year-old girl is, like, very profound, and it's not something you see that much in our society, or even in theater. So yeah, it's a really good show. If you are in the Phoenix area, it's running here until Sunday. I really enjoyed it. If it comes through your town, definitely go check it out. I highly recommend it. It is a very strong, compelling, powerful piece of theater that I really, really enjoyed. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about today. I got to see some theater. It's like the first show of the 2017-2018 season here in Phoenix. So it was fun to kind of get back into the swing of things theater-wise. And yeah, those are my thoughts. That's what I'm thinking about this Friday. So those are my thoughts on Fun Home. If you are familiar with the show, let me know what you think about it in the comments below. As always, I've been your host, Trevor Starkey from TrevorTrove.com. You can follow me at SnarkyStarkey on Twitter. You can read my full written review of Fun Home at the link in the description below over at Trevor Trove. And until next time, from here at the Trove, treasure your friends.